What's up guys? Welcome back to the Bonsai-En YouTube channel. I'm Josh, and as promised, today we're going to do some viewer comments right here on our YouTube channel. So stick around. Alright, so a lot of you might have seen that community post that we put out about a week ago, just asking you guys if you would prefer that we do a video each week, responding to some of your questions and comments that you leave on our YouTube videos. The reason for this being, if you read that post, that as this channel starts to grow, it just gets a bit out of control trying to keep up with comments and trying to respond to everybody. And sometimes, especially with bonsai and art like this, when somebody leaves a comment, most of the times it needs a much longer-winded answer than I can actually give in the comments, if that makes sense. So it's probably easier just to do a video like this where I'll sit down, I've got my cup of coffee, got my laptop, I can check out some of the comments and I can answer what you guys have been asking, and I can also respond to just some of the comments that you guys have been leaving. So without any further ado, I'm just going to go through some of the comments that are actually here, and the ones that I think that will make good content and, you know, give you guys some good insight. Those are the ones that I'll read out. So I'll just start going through some of the ones here. Before I start this too, something that has come up that seems to have gotten a little bit more interest is the fact that, I don't know if you've seen a while ago, but I was going to actually start a segment where I would get you guys to send in photos of your trees and I would do somewhat of a critique. But it wouldn't be a classic critique where I would go through and say, well, this is wrong with the tree, that's wrong, whatever. And it wouldn't have really mattered what stage your guys' trees were at. I just wanted you guys to send in some pictures of your trees, whether they were pre-bonsai or they were, you know, a small, what you would call a molesai, whether you have, you know, a bigger bonsai, whatever it might be, and then I can give some insight onto what I would do with the tree if it was in my hands. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the thing that you would do or somebody else would do, but it just gives you guys a little bit of insight on what I would do with that particular tree. So what I'll do is, in the description down below, I'll leave that link once again, and we'll see if we get any submissions. Last time we only got 2 submissions. One submission was good, the other submission didn't really follow the photo guidelines. What I really need is a photo front on of the tree, at viewing angle. I need a front photo, a side photo and a back photo. That way I can see all sides of the tree, and it needs to be clear on a plain background, whether it's black, white, whatever it is, just as long as there isn't like a whole bunch of bushes or whatever in the background that distracts from the tree. But I'll put the link down to that below and we'll try again. If you guys submit some trees, I'll go through them, I'll chuck them up on the YouTube channel and we'll have a chat about them. It's just a good way for everybody in general to learn from your tree. You know, maybe they have something that's similar and we can talk about whether we'd be wiring that now, or if it's ready to be potted up, or if it needs fertilization, whatever it might need, we can just talk about. So don't be afraid. I'm not going to rip your tree to shreds. I'm not here to talk negative. I'm not here to talk down on anybody's trees. Only positive vibes here. So don't be scared about that. So submit and we'll see if we can make a series out of it. But let's get into these comments. Alright, so I've got to go through them here because there's a lot of, you know, comments from people just saying, you know, they like videos, or, you know, they like my teaching style or whatever it might be. So those aren't really questions. So we've got the first one here. So this one's from Kelton. And this was off the How to Care for Juniper Bonsai video. This was the Juniper Crash Course video. And Kelton asks, hey, what about the dead of Canadian winter, like minus 30 degrees for a week straight? How am I to water if the soil is frozen solid and the tree is buried in a metre of snow? Now obviously Kelton's talking about putting your junipers outside here. There's always a lot of pushback that we get. Whenever we tell people they have to keep their trees outside, the first thing they'll say is, oh, we get really hot this, or we get really cold that, whatever it might be. So what Kelton's talking about here is in Canada. As you guys might have heard when we did the podcast with Nigel Saunders, they do get down to minus 30 degrees there. Now, there's hardy trees that can stay outside and they can withstand that. Usually, with junipers can get very, very low. They can have a snow load on them. They can freeze. They are what we would call like an alpine species of trees. They grow high up in the mountains, high elevation, very cold, hardy type of tree. That's what junipers are. For a younger tree and like a really older tree, I would suggest protecting them at, usually to be safe with beginners, I say around -6, even though they can handle a lot more than that. They could probably get down to about -15 without even, breaking a sweat, even though it's cold, no pun intended. But with something like this, like I said to Nigel in the podcast, I'd be more concerned about if you've got cheap bonsai pots and having them crack, because then you open yourself up to issues where cheaper bonsai pots, like the ones that come off a production line, not your handmade ones that are made out of really good clays and stuff, the really cheap ones, if they get too cold, they will crack. And then what will happen is you expose the root system to frost and all that kind of stuff. So you've got some options here. With your juniper, if you want to protect it, which you very well can over the winter, you don't have to worry about sunlight over winter because the tree's pretty much dormant and it's not really photosynthesizing anyway. So if you want to put it in an unheated storage, so like a garage or a basement, wherever it may be, as long as it's not in a temperature controlled environment, okay? Because what happens is people put their trees indoors during the winter time, they've got their fireplace on or they've got their heater on, whatever they may have, and it confuses the tree as to what season it is. They think that the weather's starting to warm up again, so they come out of dormancy and they start flushing and it's the dead middle of winter. So put it in unheated storage, whether that's a greenhouse, that's a basement, that's an unheated garage, whatever it might be. You can bring it inside, don't have to worry about the photosynthesis. As for the watering aspect you're saying here, if your tree is under snow, then you're not going to be watering it anyway. It's not going to need watering. There's no real transpiration happening during this time. So, we know that we have to water trees when we get a lot of transpiration, so the water moves up through the trees, comes out through the leaves. In winter, that's not happening a lot. There's some places in the world where they may only water their bonsai once or twice in the whole winter season because of this. So if your tree is under snow load, you're not going to be watering it anyway, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. So I hope that sorts that one out for you. We'll move on to the next question. Just got to get through these. There's quite a lot here that I've got to get through. Okay, so there's a question here from Ackman, and this is off our Bonsai Tools Buyer Guide. And it says, should someone new to bonsai start with a tool or two to start with, or get a set for more money? Now this is a fantastic question. And given that we have a bonsai shop here at Bonsai-En, we sell a lot of tools. And I see it time and time again. People come into the shop, they're really excited to buy tools, they've got lots of money, and they just want to buy everything. But the problem is, and even some of the kits that I've seen, people selling them to beginners and stuff, they don't make a whole lot of sense to me, because when you start out as a beginner, you don't need a lot of tools. Because a lot of the specialty tools that we use in bonsai are for more advanced techniques. So if you're just starting out in bonsai, what I would suggest, is you don't have to buy, you know, a top-end set of Japanese scissors or, you know, whatever it is, but buy yourself a good quality set of scissors. Spend the money now and you won't have to buy 4 or 5 sets of the cheaper ones because they will break, they won't cut properly, they squash the branches rather than cutting them. So, I would suggest starting off with a set of scissors, and then as you get some larger trees, you'll find that your scissors won't be able to cut those branches anymore. Sorry about that. Not COVID, I swear. So yeah, as you get bigger trees, you get bigger branches and things like that. So then you can get a set of branch cutters because you don't want to be cutting thicker trees and branches and stuff like that with your regular trimming shears. So get a good set of scissors, then get a good set of branch cutters, and then what I usually tell people is the time to buy a tool is when you go to do a job and you reach for the tool and it's not there. That's the time to buy that tool. Now, you know, some people probably say they like to be prepared and whatever, but I think I've mentioned it before, but I've seen some of these beginner toolkits on Amazon and stuff like that, and they've got a set of trunk splitters in a beginner's kit. Now, trunk splitting is not at all a beginner's technique. And also, I wouldn't be splitting trunks with a pair of trunk splitters that come in a $100 toolkit, especially when there's like 11 tools in that kit. You think about that, they're worth less than $10 each. Not the tools I want to be working on my trees with. So rather than going out and spending a whole bunch of money on as many tools as you can buy tools one at a time, but buy quality tools that are going to last you, because a lot of the time you may only need to buy one of that tool the whole time. I know people that have still got bonsai scissors from like 30 years ago. So if you buy a quality set, your trees will love you for it, your wallet will love you for it, even though it's a little bit more expensive of an outlay, but sometimes it's not that bad. Like, we used to sell beginner shears here, and we've actually stopped selling them because I just couldn't sell these things to people. They were only $12. They were they were just horrible scissors. And then our mid-tier scissors are $32.99. So really there's not that big of a jump in price, but the jump in quality is massive. And those $32.99 scissors will last years, where the $12 ones, they're going to last 6 months, and they're probably blown out of the packet, which is why I stopped selling them, because I just can't do that to people. It was a limited thing that we had. I tried them out. They were no good. So, as I said, start off with a pair of scissors, then get a pair of branch cutters. Next thing after that, you'll probably need some wire cutters, some gin pliers. But as I said, as you need a tool, that's when you get it. All right. What else have we got here? So there's another one from the Juniper bonsai video here, the crash course one. It's from Marissa, and she says, "Can I save mine once all the branches are yellow? I've had it outside in full sun, but I live in the desert, really hot over here, and the yellow has spread, and so far it's not getting better. I don't think I was watering it enough." So with this one, I'm just going to say it's really hard without actually seeing the tree. So I can't see what type of juniper you're talking about, whether it's a Shimpaku, Squamata, Horizontales, whatever it might be. I can't see that. But let me just say that when a juniper starts to die, it'll start to brown at the very tips of the branches, the furthest away from where it comes out of the trunk. And then as it starts to die, the brown will move closer and closer and closer in towards the trunk of the tree on every branch, okay? This will happen across the whole entire tree. So this is how you tell the difference between a juniper that's completely dying because it was overwatered, underwatered, repotted in the wrong season, whatever it might be that might have killed that juniper. You'll notice the whole tree starts to go brown from the tips towards the center. If you've only got one branch that's going brown from the tip in towards the center, chances are you've broken that branch while wiring, and 9 times out of 10 you can let the brown run back until it stops, and you'll be able to find that break site on the branch. So you need to work out whether it's the whole tree. From what it says here, it looks like all the branches are yellow, as you've stated there. Now, this is where we need to say, is this yellow or is it brown? Because yellowing of needles on these kind of things could also be a nutrient deficiency. And also, the other thing with yellowing is it could also just be the type of juniper. There are some junipers that can go yellow. And junipers can change colours throughout the seasons, through summer, through winter. It just depends on the species that you have. But one really good way that you can tell straight away is if you go to a branch on your tree and just get your fingernail and lightly scratch the bark. Underneath that top layer of bark, you should see a really vibrant, bright green colour. If it's white, then that part of the tree has died. If it's very, very light green, there's still a little bit of life left in the tree, but it could be dying. But the greener it is underneath that little scratch mark, the healthier the tree is. So just give it a little bit of a scratch. Maybe I'll do a video on that soon just to show people, how to check their trees. But you'll probably notice sometimes if you go to a big box retail store and you walk past the bonsai section, you'll see a bunch of scratches on the trunks and branches. This is people checking to see if those trees are actually still alive. But I'll also add here too, you did say you think that it was because you weren't watering it enough. Now, junipers are fairly drought tolerant. They don't like to have wet feet. But if we're talking really hot weather and you've not watered it for a whole week, then chances are it's probably died. But once again, without seeing the tree, it's hard to comment because, is it in a little bonsai pot? What kind of substrate is it in? Is it in a nursery container? This is the problem with getting advice off the internet is normally people fire back an answer straight away, but they don't have all the answers they need to answer your question, if that makes any sense. Because in this case, if I was going to help you with this properly, I'd be asking, what substrate is it in? What species of juniper is it? Where exactly do you live? What temperatures do you get? How often are you around to water? How often were you watering? All these kinds of things before I can actually say, well, here's what I think happened, or here's what might be happening. How often are you fertilizing? All this kind of stuff. Have you, done some heavy work on it lately? So I know it's kind of a long-winded answer to kind of come around the other end and just say, well, I don't really know what's wrong with your particular tree, but hopefully some of that information I put in there you can grab out and apply it to your tree and just have a look. But remember, just scratch that bark and have a look. Okay, what else have we got here? Just need to find a comment that's got a question in it. And as I was saying, we get, over all of our videos, as you guys see a new video come out, you'll see the comments on that, but we've got a whole back catalogue of videos that get found every day and watched every day, and there's just comments coming in left, right and centre, and we get quite a lot of them, and being able to go through them and answer them is quite a task. Okay, here's one. So this is from the bonsai development, get bigger, thicker trees video. And it's from, I guess you pronounce the name TC, it's T-I and then a capital C. And they say, thanks for this. At what stage can you start developing nabari into the design that I want? I'm trying to aim for a web-like root system that's visible on the surface, then eventually elevate it so part of those roots are exposed so it looks like that part of the soil had eroded away. Okay, so that's a pretty good question. So, what I think you're actually talking about there is something that we call nagari. So, it's like nabari, but with a G, nagari. And you see this lots on ficus, where either people have planted it over a rock and then taken the rock out, and then you just see the tree kind of standing up on its own root system and you can actually see through it. And it sounds like you want to maybe just build a nagari. I don't know if you actually want to make it look like a web. That would take quite a lot of work. But if you do just want to make a nagari, you can look that up on the internet and you'll see examples of that. There's a few ways you can do this. So you can actually, this probably works best with things like ficus, trident maple and Chinese elm. They would probably be your best bet at performing this technique. So what you can do is you can actually get the tree and you can plant it on top of something, whether that be a stone, whatever it might be. It has to be something that can last quite a while and not rot away, because it's going to live under soil, as you'll see in a minute. So plant your roots over the top of, I would just suggest a stone. Let them grow down and thicken. And then little by little you can start pulling some of that soil away. But what you want to do is you want to plant it in something deep, okay? Because what you want here is you want the roots to grow down. So the theory behind this is those roots that you're wanting to grow out as a nagari, what you want to do is you want to have them grow nice and thick, and then slowly, season by season, you want to take some of that soil away from them. And then as those roots, not the tips of the roots, but the tops of the roots, as they become exposed to the air and the sun, they'll actually harden off. So they'll get like a barky texture around them, kind of like a branch. So as that hardens off, you can let it keep growing, which will thicken the root even more, clear a bit more of that soil away, and then let that get exposed to the air and the sunlight and, you know, harden off, get that barky texture to it. And you keep doing this over time, and then eventually you can take that stone out from underneath it, and then you've got that root system that it sounds like you're after there. So just keep that in mind. Something else some other people do is they'll get a piece of PVC pipe and they'll plant the tree at the top of it, put soil all down it, and then let the roots grow down through the PVC pipe, and then they'll cut the pipe open and, you know. But I wouldn't suggest doing it that way. I would suggest doing it, as I said, plant it over something in a really deep container, let the roots grow down. The more the roots grow down, the thicker they're going to get. And then slowly start exposing it season by season, letting those roots harden off. It's going to take quite a while, but if that's what you're after, that's how you go about it. We got a comment here on the ficus bonsai styling video that I did, and this is from Josie. Josie says, just a thought, but have you considered cutting the two outside trunks and just leaving the middle trunk, making it a single trunk tree? It might leave too big of scars though. Then again, it might be my amateur showing. Maybe that's my issue. I don't think outside the box enough. Either way, amazing tree, and thanks for sharing your knowledge. So, a few things here. Don't ever think that that's just your amateur showing. I'm glad that you can see that tree and see your own design and your own style. If that was your tree and that's how you wanted to go about it, perfect. Because if we all design a tree the same, we're going to have a really boring art. You know, we're all going to have this same shaped tree, basically. The reason I'm keeping the triple trunks on this particular tree is I can grow a single trunk ficus any day of the week. But a tree like this is less common, so while I've got the material, I might as well go with that. Because as I said, any day of the week I can do a single trunk. So yeah, once again, the biggest thing I want to take away from there is just because you're an amateur too, or I don't even like that word, amateur. You're part of this art. You know, we all learn every day. I learn every day. You're already seeing aesthetic design in trees. You've seen that tree and, you know, to your eyes, you would take, you know, 2 of the trunks off and leave just 1. And that would be a perfectly viable design. I wouldn't say anything negative about that. I wouldn't say anything negative about the 3 trunks. I wouldn't say anything negative about having 2 trunks. The only thing I would say about multiple trunk trees is you've got to make sure that the trunks emerge from the root base. And, you know, you don't have a trunk that comes up this far and then another one comes out here and then it continues up, because that's really just a branch. You need them to come out from the root base. But in saying that, I have looked at that tree and seen a really nice line with just 1 of the trunks. But as mentioned, it's really just because I've got the triple trunk ficus and I might as well work with the material that I've got. And that tree will actually turn out really nice. It's got quite a ways to go, but it will be a really nice tree. Okay, so looks like we've got a question from a viewer. It looks like your name's pronounced Oren. And I'm sorry if I pronounce any of your names wrong. So, this question's in the middle here somewhere. Here's a question. It's the beginning of summer here in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. The akadama in this juniper is not percolating well at all. Is it too late to repot it in an akadama/lava rock 1-to-1 mix? It's starting to get coarse growth instead of the fine growth that I would like to see. It's about 5 years in my care from nursery stock and repotted once 2 years ago. Shohin size, by the way. Okay, so the first question that I would have to ask back at this, and we'll try and cover everything, but it says the akadama in this juniper is not percolating well at all. Does that mean this juniper is in 100% akadama? Is there lava rock or pumice or anything else in this? Because if it's in 100% akadama, you would need to repot that tree every 2 years, because the good quality akadama, and this is, I mean, I don't know what quality akadama you have, whether this is the really high-fired stuff or if it's, you know, that real dusty, cheaper stuff, I just don't know. But if, let's just assume it is really high-fired, high-quality akadama, you've got 2 years before that breaks down and starts suffocating the air out of that substrate. So then you've just got a mix that's holding all moisture, no oxygen. And this would be what would cause that percolation issue. So this is the reason with most of our conifers that we mix in stuff like pumice and lava rock, because these are materials that don't break down. So this keeps the oxygen levels in our bonsai medium as the akadama breaks down. Because really with junipers and black pines, we're looking at about 4 to 5 years before we repot that tree. We don't really want to be doing it any sooner. Things like deciduous trees, like your maples and stuff, you can do them every 2 years. We got things here like privets that we have to do every year, sometimes twice a year, just depending on the tree. But with conifers, as I said, you're looking at about that 4 to 5 year mark, and with your akadama, that's why we need to mix in that lava rock and that pumice, because we've got materials that don't break down. That keeps that oxygen content as the akadama does break down. If you've got 100% akadama, the whole mix is going to break down in 2 years on you. It's going to suffocate that mix. Now, you're saying here that it was done, it's been in your care for 5 years, and it was repotted once 2 years ago. shohin size. So I would say your best bet here, if you're just coming into summer, you've got some options here, because I'm just trying to think to give you the best advice here without me actually looking at the tree, because the first thing I would do is I would actually pull the tree out of the pot, and then I would have to look at the root system, and if that root system is completely filling that pot, then to get new substrate in there, we're going to have to cut some of those roots. But we don't want to be cutting roots on a juniper in summer, because what happens is you've got very high temperatures and the tree is really transpiring a lot. So if you think about it like this, when a tree transpires, we water in the soil, and then up in the foliage, it's letting water out, it's transpiring through the leaves. And to replenish that, it's bringing water up from the soil, up through the roots, up through the trunk, and out through the foliage, and it's cooling the tree down, all in this process, okay? Plus it's moving nutrients and hormones and all the other stuff that's going on, but let's be really basic about this. So you've got the water coming up through the roots, up through the trunk, out through the foliage. That's our basic movement, okay? In summer, if we come through and we cut the roots, now what happens is you've got a root system that can't take up, you know, you might have a few root tips that are still active and able to take up water, but they're not going to be able to handle that load. The tree's going to be transpiring at a rapid rate, but it's not going to be able to get that water out of the soil system as quickly. And that's how we have trees that die when they get repotted in the wrong season. So the first thing I'd be doing is pulling the tree out of the pot, and if there's enough room in the pot for you to take some of that old substrate out and put the tree back in, some new substrate in around it, then I would do that. And then maybe protect the tree for 2 weeks, I reckon, about 2 or 3 weeks, just to be safe. Shade, out of the heat, all that kind of stuff. Make sure you stick the new soil in so there's no air pockets in your soil. But if it is filling that pot full of roots and the percolation issue is so bad that the tree's not getting watered properly as it is now, your only choice might be to either take that shohin tree out of that little pot and put it in a slightly bigger pot for now until next season, and try and just tease the roots out a little bit to get some of that old soil out that is broken down and get some new substrate in and around those roots, or put it in a little nursery container with some new substrate. Once again, you'll have to tease those roots out, tease some of that old broken down soil out, and just keep it in there, keep it alive and healthy. This is not an uncommon thing in bonsai practice. You'll hear in Japan that with some of their deciduous trees, when they start to get a little bit unhealthy, they'll actually take them out of the bonsai pot and put them in a bigger wooden box and bring the tree back to health, and then later on they'll plant that back in a bonsai pot. So that may be something you have to do in this case. It's just going to be a matter of you actually pulling the tree out, having a look at where you're at with your root system, and what you can do with it, because at any cost, coming into summer now, you do not want to be cutting your roots. And it sounds to me like even if you just do tease them out a little bit, you're not going to be able to do enough to actually get new substrate in there, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Alright, now let's try and look for another question here. Okay, so we've got one here from Caitlin, and this is on our How to Slip Pot Bonsai video. Caitlin says, if you have a really small tree to develop for many years, is there a problem with slip potting from a small pot right to a large pot? Or should one incrementally go from small to medium to large to extra large, etc.? Okay, So with this one, this is a very common question for slip potting, by the way, because people say, well, we plant trees in the ground, which is basically like an unlimited pot. So if we're slip potting, why would we not just take the tree and put it in a big pot to begin with, and then we don't have to keep slip potting it up each year? But this is where we've got to separate ground growing from slip potting, because the reason we do slip pot is because there's benefits to it. If we just put the tree straight into a big pot, we might as well be just ground growing it. So, why do I say that? Now, our first benefit to slip potting is if we're in a really small pot and we fill out that pot, we get a nice tight root system, okay? And then we take it to the next size up, it fills that out, we still get a really nice tight compact root system. And then as we keep going up in size, we're always keeping that tight root system. Whereas if you put a tree in a big giant massive pot, the roots are just going to spread right out everywhere, and you're just going to have a big massive roots. They might be loose, they might not be so tight and compact. Our other advantage to slip potting is when a tree is only this big, and even when it's this big, or this big, they're really easy to move and shift. So in the case of a really bad weather event where you might get hail or very strong winds or whatever it might be, you can actually move that tree and put it in protection. If you've got all your trees in these big massive pots full of soil and it's empty soil, then you're going to be trying to move super heavy trees all the time. So the other thing is too, depending where you live and what your yard's like, as we move throughout the seasons, you will notice that the sun moves in the sky, and where you had a sunny part of the yard one part of the year, it might become a shady part of the yard. So you might have to shift all your trees from one side of the yard to another. I used to live in a house that on one half of the year trees were over that side, and on the next half of the year they were over that side, just because of the way the house was and trees and whatnot, where the shadows were. So once again, you might have to move all your trees, and if you've got them in massive pots just full of empty soil, then really you're just making your own job harder. Now the next thing is, when you're watering, you're just going to have all this soggy, wet soil sitting in the pot, not really drying out, because, there's no roots that are actually taking that moisture out of there. And, with an organic mix, it's just not going to dry very well. So you're going to have a lot of soggy soil sitting in the bottom of your pot. And the problem here is, if you've got a lot of soggy soil like that, your root system won't want to grow into that. It'll try and avoid it, okay? So when we've just got moisture content in a root system, roots will actually try and seek that out. But when we've just got, water pooling, the roots will want to try and avoid that. So we don't want to have that soil just staying completely wet like that. Now our other thing is nutrient control. If you've only got a little tree in a little pot like this, you put some fertilizer in there, the fertilizer is going to, distribute pretty well out throughout the root system and whatnot. If you've got this little tree in this big giant pot, you put fertilizer on there, you're basically just fertilizing a ton of empty soil. And, maybe the root system will get some of that. So I would just suggest going up in increments. And the other good thing about slip potting like that is if you've got a tree in, say, a 6-inch pot, okay? Little tree, little 6-inch pot. Chances are, if you're going to pot that tree up now, you're going to use a little bonsai pot like this. But if you slip pot up into an 8-inch pot, the tree grows a little bit more, so is your root system, but now the tree's actually grown a little bit more, so you're going to use a little bit bigger of a bonsai pot. Then you slip from an 8-inch up to a 10-inch, you can see where I'm going, the tree gets a bit bigger, so does the root system, but so does the pot that you've got to eventually put it in. You go up to 12-inch, tree gets bigger, root system gets bigger, but now the pot's much bigger. So your root system always stays relative to the size of the bonsai pot that you're eventually going to go into. You're not going to have to take as much root system off is if you've just got this big giant pot and you let the roots get out of control. So you're only going to have to take a small amount of roots off, and the other amount of roots that you're left over with are going to be tight and compact, which is really good for a tree. So I would just suggest doing it incrementally, and you'll be a winner from there on out. Now I might just look for one more question here. What have we got? I just want to thank you guys too, because there are a lot of comments on here, people, saying thank you for the YouTube channel and they love the teaching style and all that kind of stuff. A couple of people in here saying this is their favourite YouTube channel. So, I really appreciate all that kind of stuff. It gives me the drive to keep doing this for you guys. And we all know that being in the public eye is not all roses. We do get a lot of flack from other people who have heard to do things other ways, but I mean, that's okay. If they got taught to do something another way, then that's fine. This is one of those arts where there's not just more than one way to skin a cat, there's 1,000 ways. People teach different styles. Some people might hate slip potting, like we just talked about. Some people might only prefer ground growing. That's okay. That's how they work. So it's up to you guys as viewers as well. If people don't like how I teach or my methods, my techniques, all that kind of stuff, then, that's fine. They don't have to follow me. There's a ton of great artists out there that do things a ton of different ways. So, but for you guys that are here and you enjoy how I teach and the techniques that, I teach you guys, I appreciate having you guys here and the nice comments that you guys leave. Just trying to find another question here. Actually, this is a good one here. So, this is from a viewer named Creighton. And Creighton had pointed out on the ficus bonsai styling video, and I'm so glad he did. I wish I had have mentioned this in the video, and I didn't, because I was talking about the flaws that tree had, and this was an obvious flaw, and I forgot to mention it. Creighton pointed out on the leftmost trunk there is an odd notch towards the bottom that looks like reverse taper. From the back you can't see it though. Perhaps another angle for the front, or perhaps a grafted branch below the notch could thicken up the trunk down there, or at least eventually hide it. Do you have ideas for this? Now, I did reply to Creighton, but for you that did see that video, yes, there is a notch down the bottom. I knew exactly what he was talking about. And my plans for that was, that is actually a part of the root base that had rotten out before I'd purchased the tree. And what my plans for that were, to get rid of that inverse taper, was to actually carve a bit of that out and create some more shari that goes up with it, because there are a lot of hollows and sharis on the tree. So it will actually fit in with the design really well. It's just something that I'll do later on in the growing period. I'll get in there and actually carve it out, and that way I can create a nice smooth taper rather than having the root base come up and then it comes back out and then back in. So we'll actually come up and we'll carve all that out, create an opening in the tree, and add a little bit more interest to the front of that tree. Okay, so that was just a few questions for our first episode of this. I'd really love to hear you guys' feedback. Was this something you guys liked? Was I just rambling on too much? Did you find the information useful? As we move forward, I might actually put some comments aside rather than trying to go through them here like this, because I did find just then that it was really hard to actually find a question in amongst all, the positive feedback that I've been getting from you guys. So as I release a video and throughout the week, if I find a really good question that I think you guys will benefit from, not just the person who asked it, I might just put it in a Word document, and then I can come in here a little bit more prepared next time with, maybe 10 questions or something, and we can do it a little bit more smoothly. So let me know in the comments down below, was this something that you guys enjoyed? Should I keep doing this each week? I can do a bonsai video, and then I can also do a viewers comments video. I don't know what I'll name this yet, but I hope you guys enjoyed that. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I'll leave some links down below for you guys so you can submit your trees to our critique series. If I do get enough submissions, I'll get that started. Also, I'd like to point out that we now do have these hats available because I've had some requests for them. I'll leave a link for the hats down in the description below. And if you enjoyed the coffee cup that I've been drinking out of here, I'll leave a link down in the description below so you can get your own one of these as well. But until next time, enjoy your bonsai journey.